Howdy hey YouTube friends, and welcome to Tales of a Con Artist, the series where I talk about conventions I attend as a professional artist and tell you what the Artist Alley experience is like. I'm working on a bit of a rebrand for the series, can you tell? On today's installment, we're talking about Anime Fest, which I'll be calling A-Fest for the rest of the video, a yearly anime convention in Dallas, Texas. A-Fest has been running for over a decade, but this year was my first time attending, as well as my first time in the Artist Alley there. I'd heard a lot of good things about the con and the Artist Alley experience, so I was really excited to attend, despite all the speed bumps that happened over the weekend that we will get into. So let's talk about the con, the good, the bad, the overall experience, and some stories from over the weekend. But really quick, before we dive in, let's do our usual, hey Star, what you drawing? The art you're watching me draw in the background is some HoloStars EN fan merch I designed recently. The three in this video are the last three in the set, which means that all the Tempest boys are now on the channel, and they're up in my store now as both stickers and holographic acrylic keychains. I'll post a link to my shop in the description if you'd like to grab these boys for yourself, but for now, let's talk about A-Fest. To open, let's discuss everything that led up to the con. Applications for the con's Artist Alley opened back in February, and it's one of the weirdly competitive shows to get into. A-Fest is a juried show, meaning that getting into their Artist Alley is a bit like applying for a job. You have to submit an application and samples of your work, and a group of con staff will look through the applications to pick and choose who gets to be in their Artist Alley. Also, they technically call it the Bizarre Bazaar, but it's the same as an Artist Alley, and everyone there calls it the Artist Alley, so I'm gonna call it the Artist Alley. But the weird thing about A-Fest is they actually have a cap on how many applications they'll take. This year, they placed a cap that once they hit, I think, 250 applications, they'd close out the app form and pick their Artist Alley vendors from just those 250. And since the con has a good reputation and is fairly competitive, this means that just submitting an application can be difficult. I personally was sat at my computer watching the clock for the exact moment Artist Alley applications opened so I could submit mine as soon as possible and not get locked out when the form closed. And even if you can submit your application before the form closes, you still have to wait to find out if you got accepted or not. Overall, kind of a stressful experience for the applicants, but I totally understand why it's like this. Convention Artist Alleys are getting more and more applications in the post-COVID era, and it totally makes sense to cap applications to avoid overworking your con staff and making them read through hundreds, maybe even thousands of artist applications. Luckily, my application was approved and I got my acceptance email and invoice in March, and then I had a few months to prepare before the con at the end of July. I didn't do any specific prep for this convention. Most of my newest merch debuted at MomoCon back in May, but I did do some slight reworks to my display and inventory. I'm working on phasing out some of my older charm inventory to make my display less crowded, and I'm hoping to have a full display rework finished by Rose City Comic Con at the end of September. But in the meantime, I'm slowly but surely cleaning out some of my older, less popular designs, and I managed to sell off a few more while I was at this con, which is nice. Also, if you're interested in helping me doing some cleaning, I have a clearance section on my shop with all the stuff that's going away soon, and all of it is pretty heavily discounted. A lot of my Rune Factory merch, my Bravely Default charms, some of my D&D pins and keychains, etc. is all going away and won't be restocked, so check that out if you're interested, link is in the description. As the con got closer and I started making some actual preparations, I decided I wanted to try an experiment. I wasn't going to have anyone coming with me to this show, and it would be my first time doing an out-of-city con all by myself. And since that meant I'd have to foot the hotel bill all to myself, I decided to try and see if I could save some money elsewhere. At a con I went to with friends last year, we did a bunch of cooking the night before, brought several meals in a cooler, and aside from going out to dinner one evening, we didn't spend any money on food the entire convention. Which was very nice, because getting food can be really expensive at big events like this. So I decided that I'd try that again. I bought a small cooler and filled it with food for the whole weekend. I brought my electric kettle and some utensils with me, which meant I could bake cup ramen, instant miso soup, and instant oatmeal for meals in the hotel room, in addition to things like trail mix bagels and some pre-cut veggies for snacking on during the con. Overall, it worked pretty well, and it meant I didn't have to spend any money on con food for the entire weekend. There was definitely some room for improvement, but it was a successful experiment that I'm excited to iterate on for future shows. Anyhow, the con eventually arrived. I spent the entire Thursday before packing and preparing everything, and set off just before sunrise on Friday. I rolled up to the con hotel at around 9 a.m. on Friday morning, found parking, checked into the hotel, dropped my stuff off in my hotel room, then went back downstairs to grab my con stuff and head over to the exhibit hall. And this was where I hit my first snag. Since this was my first time at this con, I didn't know exactly where the con was, and it was early enough on the first day that there weren't really many obvious nerds milling around. It took me a little time to find the Artist Alley, only to discover that I had parked in the wrong garage. The venue was technically 2 buildings connected by a sky bridge, with the convention center on one side and the hotel on the other. Each side had their own separate parking garages, and I parked on the hotel side, which meant that to get my bags to the artist alley, I'd have to walk pretty far with 2 heavy rolling suitcases, my cooler on one shoulder, my purse on the other, and a box filled with books and a couple other things balanced kind of precariously on top of it all. And of course, the entire hotel was carpeted, which made it very hard to push my suitcases. On top of everything, the hotel layout was kind of confusing, and they ended up taking a really roundabout way there. From the parking garage, take an elevator to the lobby floor, take another elevator to get to the second floor, take the sky bridge across to the con center, then take another elevator down to the artist alley on the first floor. It was quite a walk. I realized later I could have just moved my car to the other parking garage, but it was too late by that point. I'm probably going to have to invest in one of those little fold-up wagons at some point, but anyway. Once I got to the artist alley, I stopped by check-in, got my badge, headed over to my spot, and set up my table. The alley technically opened at noon, but the room it was in was open to the public 24/7, so attendees could come and go as they pleased, and artists could choose when they show up and when they close down for the night. I did see a handful of attendees walking around before the proper noon opening time, but it didn't really pick up until 1 p.m. or so. And the Friday of this con was really interesting. Generally, Fridays at cons can be a bit slow. A lot of attendees typically do their spending on Saturday or Sunday, and spend Friday just looking around and getting a feel for the place. But I actually made a lot of sales in the first few hours of the artist alley being open, and with a much higher percentage of cash transactions too, which was interesting. So while foot traffic was on the slower side, I was still able to break even on the first day, which is always a good sign for the rest of the weekend. However, it was during this first burst of sales on the first day that I noticed something. When I'm packing for cons, I keep a pretty detailed list of everything I need to pack, and I check it off as I go. However, despite this, I always end up forgetting something. I was pretty confident that I had packed everything I needed for A-Fest, until customers started asking for keychain designs, and I couldn't find them in my charm storage. Somehow, during my packing spree the day before, I had managed to completely forget to bring some of my keychain designs, and what's worse, the ones I forgot were some of my best sellers. My Vitamin D&D charm plus half of my Critical Role Vox Machina charms. And I didn't notice until customers started asking for them, and I had to break the news that I had, unfortunately, apparently, done a big stupid and left those designs at home. And since home was almost 3 hours away, I couldn't just drive back and get more. Pour one out for missed profits. I had no less than 24 customers express disappointment that those keychains were sold out. I am definitely going to have to be more careful packing from now on. Anyway, inventory skerfuffles aside, Friday still went pretty well, but traffic definitely petered off in the afternoon. By 5, I was sitting there and daydreaming about the cup ramen waiting for me back in the hotel room, but I stuck it out and ended up staying until 8. Since the artist alley was open during all hours, late-night thefts were definitely a concern. But as I've shown off in my previous videos, I have a fairly good security system to keep my stuff safe overnight. I carry all my con stuff in 2 hardback suitcases, and at night I pack up all my inventory into those suitcases, lock them, and then use a cable bike lock to attach both suitcases to the underside of my table so no one can just walk off with them. Is it overkill? It certainly feels that way sometimes, but for cons like this one with minimal overnight security, it definitely helped put my mind at ease. And sure enough, I didn't have any thefts at this con, so there you go. Free advice from me to my fellow artists on how to protect your stuff. So Friday night, I packed everything up, locked everything down, headed back up to my hotel room, made dinner, put all my devices on their chargers, and got ready for bed. And one fun thing was that my hotel room was actually on one of the higher floors, and while most of the view was blocked by a big concrete wall, I did have a semi-nice view of city lights off in the distance. So just for fun, I ended up sleeping with the curtains partially open so I could watch the little twinkling lights as I drifted off to sleep. And I'm very glad I did, because my phone didn't charge properly overnight and it died, so none of my alarms went off and I ended up waking up late. The only reason I woke up at a reasonable time at all was the sunshine coming in through the open window. If I'd slept with the curtains closed, who knows how late I would have slept. I had left my phone plugged into one of the lamps with electrical outlets in the base, but apparently they don't keep charging if you turn the lamps off, which is really stupid, and I didn't realize this, so my phone died, and so instead of waking up early with all my devices fully charged, I woke up an hour later than I had wanted, phone dead, and with a headache on top of everything. I carry a first aid kit to cons with me because I keep some ibuprofen in it for emergencies, but I left it downstairs with all my con stuff because I figured I'll be fine, I won't get a headache, and then I woke up with a headache, as if that morning couldn't get any worse. Anyway, I quickly scarfed some breakfast, got ready, and charged my phone as much as I could before heading downstairs. Thankfully, my external power bank did charge all the way, so I was able to charge my phone the rest of the way once I got downstairs. I got to the artist alley around 9:30 and took the opportunity to walk around and check out some of the other artists before attendees started showing up. The hard part about tabling solo is I almost never get to walk around and mingle when other artists are there, but I did get to talk to a few other early birds, which was nice. Overall, Saturday was busier than Friday, and I made a lot more sales than the first day, but there were still some lulls in the afternoon. My guess is there were some big events happening in the afternoons that were drawing attendees to other parts of the con, but I was able to use the slow periods to draw on my iPad, work on comic pages, and sketch out some new ideas for prints. I'm actually working on adding more prints to my arsenal since they're good for drawing people to your booth from afar and they're easier to transport. I also do all of my prints at home since I have a large format printer, so they're easier to restock when I run out versus having to order from a supplier or something. And my prints do sell decently, not as well as charms, but I'm hoping they'll start moving more once I have a more filled out display with some more fandoms. Anyways, I packed up a little early on Saturday and did a lap of the artist alley to try and scope out everything I wanted to get from other artists. And then I ended up finding some friends and spent almost 2 hours hanging out by their table and talking about other cons, which was really nice. You might not guess it if you only know me from my videos, but I'm actually a pretty severe introvert and have a hard time talking and making friends with folks, so this year I've been trying harder to socialize with other artists so I have friends to talk to at conventions, especially at Texas cons where I'm more like to see the same people at multiple events per year. And I actually got to socialize quite a bit at this con, which I really liked. One thing I heard about this con is that the vibes are always really chill and friendly, and I definitely saw that reflected in the attendees. All the other artists I talked to were friendly and nice too, and all the attendees were really sweet. It was definitely a good vibe overall. Sunday had a much chiller start to the day than Saturday. My phone actually charged properly, my alarms went off when they were supposed to, and I had a pretty relaxing morning. Headed downstairs at around 9:30, the con officially opened at 10, but it was a super slow day and I didn't make my first sale until noonish. The entire day ended up being pretty slow, honestly. Fewer attendees overall, not a lot of sales. A lot of attendees I talked to expressed that they had run out of money on day 1 and 2. It wasn't my worst Sunday on record, but it was definitely up there. Having a successful Friday and Saturday softened the blow a little bit, and again, it did give me plenty of time to catch up on comic and sketching work, but it was still a disappointingly slow Sunday. However, believe it or not, this wasn't the final day, because A-Fest is actually a 4-day con. So apparently, A-Fest used to be over a holiday weekend, so having the con run for 4 days and also be happening on a Monday made sense because the average person had that day off from work and could go to the con without taking the day off. However, from what I heard from other vendors, the con at some point changed their dates but kept the 4-day tradition anyway, which meant that the con bled over into Monday despite it being a normal working day for most folks. And I want to be nice, because I understand the justification behind it, but this con has no business being a 4-day con. Maybe it did back before COVID and attendance numbers were higher, but the Monday of A-Fest was slow. And I mean actually the slowest con day I've ever had in the years that I've been doing this. I did still make some sales, but it almost wasn't worth being there. The good news was, again, I did get some artwork done and did end up getting to talk to a lot of the other artists. I walked around, bought a few things, chatted with my neighbors, etc. But there was almost no one there on Monday. It was kind of ridiculous. A lot of folks started packing up around noon. I personally ended up leaving at around 2-ish. I heard through the grapevine that the con will have new dates for next year, and even though they're keeping the 4-day schedule, they're moving to a Thursday through Sunday rather than Friday through Monday. MomoCon does the same thing, so hopefully that'll help the slow end of weekend sales, but we'll see how slow the Thursday of the con ends up being next year. They're also getting a new venue next year, a newly completed convention center in Arlington rather than Dallas, which folks I talked to seem pretty optimistic about. It's apparently in a more touristy area, so the hotels are a bit cheaper, there's lots of food and parking, and it's also a safer part of town, so hopefully that'll help bring the attendance numbers up. Anyways, like I said, I packed up and left a little early, like I said, mostly because I wanted to get home and see my kitties, and that was another successful con weekend wrapped up. And overall, I had a good time at A-Fest. Despite the lulls and the relatively slow latter half, I still had a good weekend overall and had a positive experience. My most major skerfuffles were caused by my own mistakes, so lesson learned for future events, I suppose. I also had a lot of really lovely interactions with both attendees and other artists. As I said previously, I've been making the effort to try and socialize with other artists more, and I feel like I definitely was able to accomplish that at this con. I got to chat with folks I'd met at previous shows, as well as see some new folks who I got to meet and talk to for the first time. I also got to talk a few people's ears off about YouTube stuff, to the point where I might do either a live stream or YouTube video talking about my YouTube strategy and how it's helped me market my art way better than any other social media ever has. I'm definitely considering doing that in the future, so if that's something you're interested in, let me know in the comments. I also had a lot of folks come up to me at my table and say they had watched my videos or followed me on social media, which was so cool because it's always nice to know that my hard work is paying off and, bringing joy to actual real people, and getting to meet those people in person is very neat. And I don't know, that sounds kind of sappy maybe, but I am a very sappy person, so we're just all gonna have to deal with that. Deal with it. I'm emotional. Yeah. And also, can I just say, the attendees at this con were so freaking nice. Like, all the people I talked to were just like so sweet and so nice. And one of my first sales on Friday, I had a Critical Role cosplayer buy some stuff from my table. And then before they walked off, they asked if I wanted a dice bag. Like, for free, like this nice handmade drawstring dice bag. They had apparently made a bunch over quarantine and were just handing them out to people at the con for free. So anyway, I have a cute dice bag now. It's purple. I love it. I didn't get this person's info, but they were so sweet. Thank you so much for the dice bag. I will treasure it always. There was also a dude in a suit made entirely of fabric with little rubber duck patterns on it, and when I commented on it, he gave me a little rubber duck, so I have a duck now. Leave your name suggestions in the comments. The duck needs a name. Thank you, Duckman, for being an absolute legend. I also had several run-ins with folks who knew my comic and came to visit me, which was super cool. And even some folks who were like in my Discord and came to this con to meet me in person, which was just like, oh my God, giving me the big dokies over here. I sob, I weep, I wait until you walk away, and then frantically message my friends on Discord gushing about how cool it is that people like my comic and come visit me at cons, and it's so cool. I even had one person come visit my table with their family who apparently came all the way to the con from Oklahoma, mostly to visit me. And I'm still having trouble processing that, if I'm being honest, because that is so freaking cool. I hope you enjoyed the con. Thank you for taking the time to come all the way down here and say hi. It was super cool, and I'm still emotional about it. Also, I didn't get their info, but shout out to the person who gave me this cute little greeting card fan art. It has my kiddos on it, and I screamed, and I'm sticking it to my bulletin board later. I love it. Look at it. Look at it. Aside from how cool it was getting to meet some lovely fans of my work, another cool moment was actually finally selling the very last copies of the original How to webcomic. I ran a Kickstarter to print the book in 2021, got 2,000 copies of the book printed, and I've been slowly selling them off ever since. Once the new edition was added to my website back in spring, I took the original version of the book off my store, but I still had a box left over, so I've been slowly but surely selling them at cons and in-person events. And on Monday, the last day of A-Fest, I sold the very last copy of the original How to webcomic, just a few days shy of the 2-year anniversary of the Kickstarter. I still have a few copies I saved for myself just to display and say, hey, look at this thing I made. But it feels really surreal for the book to be entirely sold out. This book has made such a big impact on my life, and it's kind of bittersweet to not be selling them anymore. It's like the end of an era, but it's also the beginning of something bigger and better, because I'll have the updated 2023 editions coming out later this year, and then I can start bringing those to cons instead. And I'm ordering 3,000 this time, so we'll see how long those last. My goal is to have them in stock for Rose City Comic Con, so we'll see if they turn up in time. Hopefully. Oh, God. And lastly, to close out the video, let's do the usual breakdown of profits and expenses. As always, I do this for transparency, not for bragging, as I find it can help other artists see what I mean when I talk about good cons versus bad cons. Also, as always, I'm rounding these numbers a bit to make the math easier. So firstly, let's discuss earnings. Between cash and card transactions, Friday I made $1,200, Saturday I made $1,800, Sunday I made $470, and Monday I made $350, for a total of about $39.20 in net income over the course of the weekend. You see what I mean when I say that Sunday and Monday were slow? Yeah. However, I didn't get to take all that money home with me, as I also have to account for my expenses. This con was a medium on expenses. It's more expensive than an in-city con since it was far away enough I had to pay for a hotel, but I was also able to drive so I didn't have to pay for a plane ticket, so it was cheaper than an out-of-state cons like MomoCon or Holiday Matsuri. As mentioned before, I also saved some money by bringing my food for the weekend rather than buying food at the con or ordering delivery. So, as for expenses, the fee for the table was $150. My hotel for 3 nights was about $180 per night with the convention discount, plus $15 a day on parking, plus taxes and fees and whatever. All that totaled out to, and I'm not joking here, $666. Welcome to the Hell Hotel, apparently. Whew. Food cost about $30 since I brought most of it from home. Technically closer to $50 or $60 if you include the cooler I bought the day before the show. It took about a full tank of gas to get there and back, so we'll say about $35 for gas. And lastly, paying my cat sitter for the days I was gone ended up being around $80, for a grand total of just under $1,000 in expenses for the entire trip. Subtract the expenses from our net income, and my profits for A-Fest were just under $3,000. Despite the slow latter half of the weekend, I'd still consider A-Fest a good con. I made more than my average for in-state shows, I was able to keep my costs relatively low, and I made a nice little profit I can put towards making new merch from my upcoming fall events. Those acrylic stands are coming soon, folks, I promise. For future shows, I'd like to split the hotel costs with other people to save some money, but this was a good way to prove that I can still profit even if I have to foot the hotel bill all by myself. Overall, I definitely want to do A-Fest again in the future and will absolutely be applying for next year's show. The staff I talked to were all very professional, everything seemed organized well for my opinion, and aside from my opinion about the con not needing to be 4 days, I still had a good time and considered it worth my time to attend. Thanks for a good show, A-Fest, and I'll hopefully be back next year. I have a few more shows coming up for the rest of 2023. The day this video goes up, I'll have just gotten back from Bell County Comic Con, but I don't think I'll be making a vlog about that one as it's a shorter local show. My confirmed shows for the rest of the year are GalaxyCon Austin happening Labor Day weekend, Rose City Comic Con in Portland at the end of September, and Anime Weekend Atlanta happening Halloween weekend. I also might do Anime Frontier in December, but I'm still waiting to hear back if I got accepted into that one. Not doing Holiday Matsuri this year for those curious. Expenses were really high for that one last year, and I can't really justify doing it when the dates are so weird and it's so close to Christmas this time around. Maybe in 2024, but we'll see. As always, I keep an updated list of upcoming shows on my website, so be sure to check that out in the description. Again, if you'd like to grab the art featured in this video, any of my clearance items I'm in the process of discontinuing, as well as any of the other art I make and sell, I'll have a link to my shop in the description below. Alright, that just about does it for this video. I hope you have a good rest of your day, and remember to stay hydrated because my goodness, we are in for a hot summer.